any market, you can have these challenges, right? It doesn't matter if it's a seller's market or a buyer's market, it's just a different challenge. Right now, I'm sure everyone's seeing cut appraisals, and you're probably seeing buyers get cold feet because they're going into contract so quickly and they're making quick decisions and they're paying so much over a list price. It's like the Wild West out there. So we were gonna, I think, have Tom kind of lead the way because he sees everything that funnels through the office, right? Everything that falls apart. Tom, I don't know if you have any way you want to guide it today or if you wanted me to help, but I'm gonna turn to you for a second and hear your thoughts.
Can you hear me?
I can. I'm gonna, I think everyone else is muted. Okay, good.
I see on an average week, probably 2 to 3, what I would call buyer remorse situations. And it's getting to be a common thing. And what is also happening is your appraisals are now going to automated values where the appraisers are not even going in houses. And those appraisals are being based on the credit worthiness of the buyer. So we're seeing appraisal cuts $1,000 to 3%, and it's just getting to be a mess. So realistically, what you have to do is prepare your buyer for about what they're going to go through. When you get into these bid wars, like I'm in one now, the listing agent always has the advantage because they see all the offers, plus their buyers are in the mix too. So the only thing I'm going to say is you need to keep your deals clean. You need to explain to your buyers what's going to happen realistically. Then you have to go over a couple of things. And one of them is, do you put in your best offer or do you use an escalation clause? And that's up for debate on which one's the best way to go. So we'll discuss that in a second. And then number 2, you have to educate your buyer on the property's value today and what it is in a year from now. This seems to work for me when I talk with people that you're paying 2021 prices today to get the house you want today, to lock in the interest rate today. Considering that houses go up 3 to 6% a year historically, are you better off to overpay for a house today to get what you want and lock in a rate, or do you want to take that chance and not buy the house and see what happens? But these are the things you need to talk with your buyer about before you get into it. I showed 5 houses over the weekend. Steve Collins and I crossed paths. The 5 that I was in are all in contract for more than I ever thought they would sell for, and very quickly. I mean, really quickly. I tried to see one house that they cut off showings because they had over 20 offers on the table and they didn't want to be bothered anymore. It's getting to be like that. So the only thing I'm going to talk about real quick is what I call the appraisal gap guarantee. If you do that, where you say your buyer will cover the gap in the appraisal, you need to verify they have those funds. Don't say you're going to cover a $5,000 gap in the appraisal and they don't have the $5,000. That's not a good thing. And then the last thing on Sue's list that she gave me to talk about, then we'll open this up for discussion. I don't know if you guys call the listing agent before you show the house, but I'm going to say that's a good thing to do. Call ahead, be nice, be courteous, and just ask them what's going on. Of those 5 houses I showed, 3 of the listing agents have never returned my phone call, which is sort of, that's kind of odd. But I call before I go just to ask. Are those pictures realistic? What's the intention for possession? I go over all that stuff before I walk in the door, because if the seller wants a 30-day possession after closing, that may not work for my client. So I don't know if you guys do that or not, but I call the listing agent. So with all that being said, I'm going to open this up for Q&A because everybody's different, but I am seeing a lot of this. It's not any one person. It's just 2 to 3 a week. And it's usually when they do the inspections because you're taking out, not you guys, but somebody's taking out the request to remedy. And then all of a sudden you come back and there's a $500 repair and the buyers walk away. I'm not an advocate of taking that out, but just about every contract that comes across my desk, the request to remedy has been taken away. Now, that gives the buyer the opportunity to walk out if they're not happy with the inspection. That's not really fair to the seller unless there's a significant thing. Like a burnout light bulb is not a reason to cancel, but technically they could. So I'm open for questions. You could ask me anything you like because I see every file. And I did one this morning. Went in contract yesterday, canceled today. So fire away. Ask anything you like.
Tom, it's Tonda. I have a question. Like, when you're putting in an offer, how do you know what the highest and best is? Like, I have a particular property that's in Greenfield that we're going to see today, and I looked on Zillow. They have it priced at $219, and it's exactly what you said. The listing agent reached out to me and said that the buyers are getting cold feet. That's what he said, and letting me know it's going back on the market. And so that's basically just trying to figure out what that offer should look like. You know, Zillow says 213. Doing some research, the comps truly said about high 210, and they have it listed at 219. So, but it's unique. It's on 5 acres, etc. I just don't know how to make that offer and make it attractive.
Well, first, the listing agent can't tell you what the highest and best offer was. Okay, they can't disclose that. So it's really up to you and your client to determine what they want to pay for it. If it's listed at 219, excuse me, you kind of think that's what the seller wants. But again, it's between you and your client, not the listing agent, because the listing agent can't tell you. That's the problem with these highest and best in these escalation clauses. You really don't know what you're dealing with. You're gambling. So I personally believe you just put your best offer on the table and call it a day, but some people like escalation clauses. I know a couple of our agents that are online now that do theirs with escalations, and they've been very successful with it. I don't particularly like them because it gives the listing agent the opportunity to compete against that. They can literally say they've got one on the table for 200,000, 201 would buy the house. They're not supposed to do that, but they do. So just put your best offer on the table, but let your buyer tell you what to do.
So to that point, I would love to hear maybe from Courtney, like how would you advise Tonda?
Well, I always have clients that come to me and say, okay, well, I want this house. What do I spend? I personally, sorry, am I loud? Tom always says I talk loud. I personally hate to give a number because I don't think it's my job to decide on what they're going to spend on a house. So how I handle the situation is I will pull comps. I will show them what comps are in the community, what they're selling for. And my famous line is, I don't want to give you a number because I would hate for you to lose the house by $1,000 and you come back and you're upset with me, right? So I encourage them to do what they, here's the comps, here's what the market's selling for. It's your decision what you pay for a house. Just like if you go to any store, it's your decision what you pay, for a clothing item or another purchase. So that's how I handle it. And they usually are pretty receptive to that. I can tell them historically, I can show you what houses have been listed for, and they're typically going 10 to 15,000 over in this neighborhood. And I tell them, this is what the house is worth. And if they want to overpay because they absolutely love the house, then that, that's their decision. Because some clients, they say, I want this house. I don't care what I have to spend for it. I'm not going to move for 20 years, so it doesn't matter to me. Because that's another thing I always bring up is we have to think, if you decided, what's your plan for this house? Is your goal or your thoughts you're gonna live here 5 years? Are you gonna live here 10 years? Are you gonna sell it in 2 years? Because that's gonna make the decision where when you call me, and I'll tell them this, if you call me in 2 years and say, hey, I need you to sell this house, just know the chances are, if we're overpaying for it, you're probably gonna have to bring some money to the table. So that's kind of how I handle those situations.
Well, it's like today, I've got a 1 o'clock appointment to show a house that's got 20 showings set up today and tomorrow. And the listing agent said they intentionally lowered the price to collect offers. And they're not going to present offers until they do their open house on Sunday.
Hmm.
That listing agent is going to sit there with a bundle of offers on the table and tell everybody that doesn't have an agent with them, you got to beat this price. You watch. But they can do that. And that's the problem. So now I got to tell my customer, here's the comps, this is the price range in the neighborhood. If you want to buy this house, you get to pick the price. Because I'm not going to give them a number. I'm not going to even come close to giving them a number. If they want it, they get to pick their price. But their offer is going to sit there with 20 other offers until after the open house. It's not fair, but there's nothing wrong with doing that. But there's listing agents intentionally underpricing houses. There's no question about that.
So I'd like to address a question that Norm has. When you were commenting, Tom, Norm said, I thought that was illegal. And I believe he's referring to the fact if a listing agent's collecting offers and then they find someone unrepresented and then share with that person, if you go here, you can get it. Without a seller's permission, Norm, that would be unethical. You can only share a comment like that if your seller is asking you to. So you're exactly right. It would have been unethical if they just sit there and then find someone unrepresented and then share that. Hopefully there aren't any unethical agents out there doing it.
Well, what they can do with seller's permission is say that they've got 15 offers in a range of 200 to 220. They can't be specific, but they can talk about it as long as the seller says okay. So there you go.
Right. Okay. So we said something in the very beginning. I kind of jotted down some issues that are occurring. And the very first thing that came up that Tom said was buyer's remorse is happening, right? Our buyers are getting frantic and they think they have to put in $20,000 over list price. They go into contract, they're super excited, they sleep on it, they wake up the next day and they're like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? So I would love to hear from, someone that's had this experience. How do you handle that situation? Do you talk to your buyer and try to talk them through it so they stay in a contract, or do you just simply support them and say, okay, let's go ahead and get out of it? What do some of you do? Stacey Katzer.
Well, one thing that comes to mind for me is, you can offer $1 million for a house if you want, but the bottom line is, as long as you're financing, it's going to come down to the appraisal. So that's where, if you show your clients the comps and let them know, I've even had buyers that are saying that'll go in, above asking, as well as offer to pay over a low appraised value of a certain amount. But just always remind them it's always going to come down to the appraised value. And if you're looking at the comps and here's where the appraisal is probably going to come in, then you can go from there and base your number on that information.
Definitely. I have a funny solution that one of my old mentors taught me. She would carry around a little tiny jar of M&Ms and she would give them to her buyers when they went into contract, especially in like a heated market like this, and say, okay, these are your pills. Tonight, you're going to have buyer's remorse. Take 2 of these, call me in the morning, and you'll be fine. But she you know, she got ahead of it and she let them know the point is you are going to have buyer's remorse. So just remember that it's because it's the heat of the moment. So when you wake up and you have that, try to think logically through it. It's not like she was trying to push them to stay in contract, but she just wanted them to realize you're more than likely going to have a little remorse in the morning. It's normal.
And then when you do the inspection, and then when the appraisal comes in, so it's not just then, it's a couple times throughout the transaction.
They're going to be eating a lot of M&Ms.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So Tom, I have a feeling a few people might not know what automated values are. Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
I can do that.
Okay.
An automated value is somebody sitting at a desk, they type in the address, and they pull the comps off of the internet. They pull the comps off the internet. They don't see the house, they just hit Zillow or they'll go to realtor.com, and it comes back and it gives an estimated range of value. It's online, it's impersonal, but they use that to gauge the value of the neighborhood. So you could have the best house in the neighborhood, but it's going to rate the house on the neighborhood. We're getting cut not significant amounts of money, but enough to make it aggravating. They use AVMs in foreclosures years ago where the appraisers never came out. They just did a Zillow search and Zillow said 150, 180. They throw a number on it and that's the number. Anytime that you get an appraisal cut with an automated value, you have the right to contest it, which means that the seller or whoever's contesting can hire an appraisal to be done, physically done, but they bear the cost of it. So AVMs, automated values, is simply computer driven off the internet. And considering that most realtors don't allow their sales to be on the internet, the most recent sales don't show up either. So automated values, that's just what they're doing now. That's all. It's quick. And it's cheap.
How do you know if it was an actual appraisal done or an automated value?
Well, they don't call to see the house. So if you go out and they just call the lender and say, when are you going to do the appraisal? And they say it's already done. Then you know it's an automated value if they haven't scheduled to go into it. I've got one going on right now that's supposed to close on Monday that the appraisal got cut, but we found out it was an automated appraisal.
Would a lender be required to let the buyer know what type of an appraisal was done?
Only if asked. They don't have to disclose if it's automated or if it's a real one. The sad thing about it is they still charge you the same $550. So big down payment people, 20% down people, or buyers, I should say, they probably just do an automated, make sure it's in the range of value, then they don't worry about it. But your minimum down FHAs or 5% down conventionals, they probably will do an automated value. And just to see if it's in the ballpark, then send out the appraisal. That's all. I don't like them. I really don't like automated values because it's not fair to the house.
I completely agree. And I'm wondering, because this is a little bit, this is new territory. I mean, we did see these back in the last downturn. Well, I wouldn't say in the last downturn. In like 2005, 6, and 7, when I think things were like skyrocketing, there were so many appraisals being done, they couldn't keep up. So they started the automated appraisals, which is what's happening right now. It's because they can't keep up, right? So I'm wondering, Tom, and maybe you know this, let's say we get a cut appraisal, it was an automated appraisal, but I'm the agent. I feel really confident because it has a new roof, new windows, new AC, new flooring, new kitchen, all of this that they didn't take into account. Would they consider doing an in-person appraisal if contested? Fingers crossed, maybe.
You have to contest it. That's the thing. And if you represent the seller would have to contest it. Mm-hmm. And they may or may not charge them, but it has to be contested. People are so quick to take that as the truth on appraisals. You have to look at it. If it's an automated one, you can contest, but you have to do it. They won't tell you. You have to ask.
For sure. And just for those of you that maybe haven't been through a lot of cut appraisals before, if they do an in-person appraisal and it gets cut and you don't agree with it as the listing agent, you can try to contest it, but I will tell you the chances of them changing that appraisal is very, very slim. So while everyone's head typically goes there, they're like, oh, we'll just get with that appraisal. They just need to do another one. Just history has shown that does not happen very often at all.
No, it won't, and they're going to charge you $550 to do it.
Yeah, sometimes the answer is you either have to renegotiate that deal, right? So the buyer and seller can come to new terms with this new price, or your buyer can flip to a different lender. If it's a conventional, right? FHA, that appraisal is going to stick with the house. So you're kind of stuck with it. If it's conventional, you can try a new lender, which will delay your closing, of course, but might be able to hold it together at a different price. So those are some options to think about.
Chris, can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Regarding putting in an offer and attaching your approval. So in a scenario like where they're approved up to X amount of dollars and you want to, you know, like this particular house, they're approved for 225, but they may not want to put in asking. How does that work, just to let them know that, yeah, they're approved for conventional, but not putting all your cards on the table, so to speak? Does that make sense?
Yeah, the ideal way to send a pre-approval is to have your lender write up with the specific address, right? And it just simply states, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so they are approved to purchase this home per our research, or whatever, however they word it. But don't put a price. Like, they don't have to put how much they're approved up to.
Okay, thank you.
But if it has a specific address, then the listing agent's going to feel comfortable, like, okay, the lender at least looked at which home they're putting an offer in on, and they're saying they're putting in black and white that they feel pretty confident this is going to work.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's always good to be house specific. You don't want to send over an opinion letter that says they can afford 400 when they're buying a 200. So, yeah. All right. What else?
I see that a lot, like as a listing agent. Let's say I have a home listed for 300,000, and the person's approved to 330, and they put in an offer of 290. I don't know. To me, it doesn't sway my negotiations. That, you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't. I don't know what the rest of you think.
You know, it's like the one I've got today. They're pre-approved for 390,000, and we're looking at 240,000 on our house. I'm not going to give them that.
That one's a pretty big gap.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. We'll do a specific to the address one. But
Yeah, so this is something to think about. Like, when your buyer is choosing a lender and you have a little bit of influence over that, it's nice to know that you're going to have a lender that will work in that kind of detail with you, right? If you want property specific pre-approvals, you don't want to have to wait 3 days to get that. You want to have a really tight relationship with someone that will do it for you very quickly.
okay, anybody got anything else? I got one thing left for me.
Cool.
Everybody's so quiet. We've talked about these family buyer warm and fuzzy letters that people like to write up. You know, how great they are, who they are, where they came from, and all that good stuff, pictures of the cat and the dog, and it stops today. I cannot approve a file if that is in there. No more family fuzzy letters, because they've been deemed to be discriminatory. Like, I just saw one come through where I'm a school teacher, my husband's paramedic, would love your house, whatever. But what it does is it classifies the buyer. It tells that seller, this is who we are, what we are, pick us over everybody else. Those are really close to being fair housing violations and discriminatory. So we just don't put them in the loop. If your client gives you one, fine, you can keep it, you can frame it and put it on your wall, but I don't want to see it, okay? it goes in that loop and it's in there for 3 years. And I don't want to have any future problems, and you don't either, with any sort of issues tied to the seller and the buyer know each other's personality, who they are, where they work at. It's just not a good thing. So no more family fuzzy letters, okay? I'll send them back to you.
I'm going to create a wall in the office called the Family Fuzzy Family Fuzzy Letter Wall. I'm going to turn them all out.
I used to use the heck out of them. So, and they work. So it is, I get where it can be deemed as discrimination now, right? But when I was doing it, it didn't feel like it. So if you have a client that would like to write a letter, right, you will want to go over with them why they've probably read on the internet that it's a really good thing to do and it could help them secure the deal. But in Ohio, we are very, very specific in our rules and laws, and discrimination is a #1 thing. And we don't do this and we don't promote this because we don't want to be seen as discriminating. And I think most people will understand.
Oh, they'll understand. But if you believe everything on the internet, it tells you to do that. Well, okay. You just don't want to tell somebody that your buyer's an FBI agent type of scenario. You just don't do it. They can give it to you, and I don't care what you do with it, but I do not want to see those family fuzzy letters. Just don't want to do it.
Tom, does that include like cover letters, just on your contract, like as far as like just introducing yourself and that your buyer's approved and what type of loan they have or whatever? Are those,
Well,
should we not do those as well?
what you cannot do is introduce your client that in any way profiles them. Like, you can't say they're high school graduates, 40 years old, 3 kids, 2 dogs, 2 cats. No, you just say, hi, my name is Tom Trigg. We're introduce, Bill and Mary Smith, and we hope you consider our offer. Simple. But
Got it.
nothing that identifies those people to who they are, what they are, and where they came from. Just can't do it.
Yeah, just stick to the facts of the contract. Like Tonda, I think it's great that you may kind of do a little boost and promotion on how well qualified they are. The best way to do that is through your lender, because then it's it's not coming from you, right? It's coming from the professional in their arena. So you could have an extra letter, like an email from your lender that says, hey, these people are way qualified. Like whatever words they want to put in black and white, you're free to share that. But nothing, like Tom said, that would be too specific to them and their home life.
That letter cannot identify those people in any way that could be classified as profiling. This last one I saw yesterday was a family history. I mean, I know who their grandparents are. No.
Would have worked, I promise you. Heartstrings.
I sent that one back.
Woo. Okay, so I have one more topic that I think would be valuable for everyone. Let's go back to escalation clauses. I would love to hear from experienced listing agents to say, should they be used or not used? Why and why not? Like, what are all the different opinions out there?
Steve, speak up. You do it very well.
Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. And actually, I was going to make a comment. I was in a multiple offer situation. Matter of fact, this past weekend, and my buyers wanted to include a letter and a picture of their family. And, from Tom's advice, I informed them that that's a fair housing issue just waiting to happen. As a listing agent, I don't allow that. Well, I don't recognize that. I inform. If someone sends me a letter, I don't open it because I don't want any, documentation or any way to trace that I saw a letter or a picture, just for the fair housing reason.
All right, well, talk about your escalation. I mean, you have more success than anybody.
Yeah, and I tell you, I've had a couple instances, matter of fact, 2 last week, where the listing agents have come back to me and said, we don't want an escalation, just bring your highest and best offer without an escalation. I mean, I think it depends on who the listing agent is, whether they, accept that or not. I had a listing agent whom everyone would recognize who it is, a very prominent listing agent, told me that it was too confusing. Too confusing. I mean, I think that you're not doing your seller justice by not considering, the highest and best offer. I mean, obviously that's our primary responsibility, is to get the best possible deal for our sellers. And I just felt that, I thought that was a pretty lame excuse.
I will say when you have 7, 10, I think Francis had one that had 24 offers and there's escalation clauses, and what other offer are you comparing that to? Is their highest? I think it does get milky, and for the seller, I think it can be very confusing.
I don't disagree with that, but I mean, what I do is I have a spreadsheet that I use, and I mean, it's my responsibility to, explain to the seller what's going on and to present to them, what an unbiased, opinion of what the best contract is. So, I mean, I think that's my responsibility to explain to them what's going on with it. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
So where it gets confusing is, let's say you have 20 offers and 3 escalation clauses. And, one says it's 200,000, but we'll go 1,000 over up to 210. Then another one says, I'm offering 200,000. I'll go 1,000 over up to 215. And then you have to start to decipher like what triggers what. Can I say that the escalation clause that would go up to 210 would trigger my 215 so I can really get 211? And I think that's where people get really confused. Tom, how would you explain how that should work?
Oh, thanks.
Because it's hard. I say each other, but I don't know if I'm right.
Well, I actually did Francis 24 offers for him, or I helped him with it. You have to work it backwards. You, as the listing agent, pick the highest offer and then work it backwards. For example, if you've got an escalation up to 215, 215 is the highest offer, then you work it down. So if it's 215, 210, 200, you find out what your ceiling is and you have to go back. So in that case, if you've got one at 215 and the other one's at 210, that triggers it, because you can go back to the 215 offer, to the high one, and say, my next best offer is 211, or whatever it is. But you work it backwards, not forward. The problem with most agents is they start with offer 1 and work it forward, but you got to think backwards. Find the highest one, escalation, then go backwards. Like Steve puts his on a spreadsheet, that's what Francis did. We put it on a spreadsheet. But we did it in order of the highest price. We didn't do it on the contract price, we did it on the escalation price. It came back.
But then there's a lot of times other things involved too, like somebody's asking for a home warranty, somebody's not asking for a home warranty, somebody's asking to cover a low appraisal, and somebody else is not. So it's not just those 2 variables in place.
Well, I know that's the reason you have to present every offer, but I do a summary page. I actually put on each offer, it's this amount of money, these terms, so you can see it. Francis did it on a spreadsheet, warranty, no warranty, gap coverage. He did it on a spreadsheet because he had so many. And then when you look at the bottom line, then you can kind of tell which one's the better one, which one's not. Sometimes cash offers are better than one that's got $2,000 more, but it has to be financed. But those are questions the seller has to answer. You have to present it as best you can as what it is, and you work it backwards. Go high to low, not low up. It's difficult, I know.
I'll tell you what I do because I have a feeble mind and I need it to be simple. So if I had that scenario and I had 20 offers and there were all these escalation clauses, sometimes I'll tell my seller, like, you know what we could do? Why don't we just go to that top offer, that 215, and just say, hey, I'm just going to call them. I'll call them and say, hey, if you'll just pay 215, the house is yours. We don't want to deal with anything else. And I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, that works. Courtney, what do you do?
I put it on a spreadsheet to go through it, but I usually do. I will call too, and let the seller, like you said, call and say, okay, well, you go to this. But I will tell you, it's not always the highest offer, and that's what I'm coming. On my listings recently, we haven't necessarily chose the highest offer, guys. So we, the one I just did, we had like 12 offers. We chose appraisal gap because we knew the offers were so high. There was no way this house was appraising. No way that, and it didn't. So we chose, one had a $15,000 appraisal gap. Most of them had between 6 and 7. We chose that. So we did pick the right offer. It was the highest. But yeah, same thing. Just see, and again, that appraisal gap is becoming important if you're financing because you have to know that neighborhood. You have to know that what the house is going to appraise for.
That is such smart advice. So the bottom line is, you know, get so familiar with that house and truly what it's probably going to appraise for, and that's going to help guide your clients the best.
And get proof of funds if they're offering to pay $15,000 over the appraised value.
Absolutely.
Smart. I love it. What other questions do you have?
I do want to say one thing because it was just brought up with that illegal question. And I just want everybody to remember that real estate is, while it can be black and white, it also is a little gray at times. And it's never a good idea to say to any agent that you think they're doing something illegal. We should be respectful and kind to each other and our businesses. If you think somebody is doing something illegal, you should call Chris or Tom first before you ever say anything, because that would be very mean. Am I right?
That's a great point.
It's a great point because it is easy to jump to conclusions when there could be a lot more
To the story.
What happened to your? Something happened to your microphone? Did you guys hear that? Was that just me?
I heard it.
That
I
was
heard
it. Start over again.
Did I scream?
It sounded like.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree, Kristen. Because there could be more to the story. Like we may be jumping to a judgment, but we may not know the whole story. So always I would do the same thing before I ever said anything that direct. I would be talking to Tom or Courtney or Stacy or someone with lots of experience to make sure I'm seeing the whole picture. Yeah, because know that we're licensed realtors. We're all held to a very high ethical standard, and I go into every transaction feeling and knowing that my counterpart is acting in an ethical manner until I see something blatantly different. And to be honest with you, it doesn't happen very often, at least in my experience. Most agents are doing the very best they can. I do want to point out that Tonda had a question. Some people have never used an escalation clause, so they need to know what that means. Who would like to explain it? No?
I think let Steve do it because he uses it all the time.
Steve, do you want to explain what an escalation clause is?
Steve.
I think you have a lot of confidence in me this morning, but
I do.
basically what a escalation clause is, and this is how I explain it to my buyers. Okay, an escalation clause creates a counter offer. So the only number they can hold us to is the purchase price that we offer in the original contract. What an escalation clause does is it says that we will buy the home we will beat any verifiable, the key word being verifiable, offer by X amount of dollars up to a cap on the price that we will pay for the home. What I do is I explain to them that it kind of basically gives us first right of refusal. So in other words, if we offer $200,000 on a home and we say that we're going to beat any verifiable offer by $1,000 with a maximum purchase price of $210,000, okay, say somebody comes in and they offer them $207,000. Okay, we have the opportunity to buy it at $208,000, but that creates a counteroffer situation. So if the buyer gets cold feet when I present them with an offer that's to the $8,000 over our original offer, they can say, no, we've decided not to do that, and goes to the next person.
It's a document. There's a document.
Did that make any sense?
Yeah.
Or am I talking in circles?
No, what you've done is you've created a first right of refusal
Yes.
in a counter form.
Yes.
We'll pay X amount of dollars, but if somebody comes in higher, we'll pay up to.
Uh-huh.
And all that is a first right of refusal. Because if they come back and say, yeah, you got it at this price, you can say no.
Yes. And to that point, I like the comment that Chris made and that Courtney and Stacy made. I've had scenarios where, which obviously we all have, where if somebody offers 200,000 and they're willing to go up to 210 with an escalation, I'll just call them and say, hey, will you at 210,000, you got it. Will you pay 210 without messing with the escalation and, things of that nature. And you just send them an addendum and, creating a purchase price of 210,000 and you've got a done deal.
I love doing that.
Mm-hmm. That's so good.
If you are writing an offer and you would like to include an escalation clause in .loop under clauses, there's a template, right? There's a clause in there that you can copy and paste, make minor modifications with what your specific buyer would like to do. Like, how high is their cap? Is it 210? Is it 215? And how much over another offer would they be willing to pay? Is it $500, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000? Whatever it happens to be, you do have to fill in those little blanks.
Can I add this too? One trick that I've learned is to, in the original offer, the purchase contract, under additional terms and conditions, I have started writing, please see escalation addendum, because I've had many people come back, I had an agent once and say, oh, I didn't see your escalation. I'm like, well, I sent it to you. So it's like they're just looking at the original offer. They aren't looking at the other addendum. So make sure, that's what I've started doing, just so it's black and white, like they can't say, it draws their attention that there is more to this offer.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
So helpful. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
You're all quiet.
Because they're so well trained, they all know everything.
Yeah, they think they do.
We do. All right. Well, that's all we had on the agenda for today. We just wanted to mastermind around this crazy market. So if you need anything, let us know, and have a great weekend.
All right. See you all on the round if you need me.